This is the Big Fish Cares Podcast. Big Fish Cares Podcast. And here's your host, Benny Fisher.
If you guys ever wondered how it is that I'm able to do all the cool things I get to do and be in all the different places and produce all the content that I get to do, I'm finally going to let my secret out of the bag. It all involves having an incredible and amazing team. And that all starts with the person that puts up with all of my stuff at work, that is. Welcome to the show, Allie Monroe, who is the secret behind BennyFisher.com, the Big Fish Cares podcast, my content team, and she even helps me with all my CEO duties at Big Fish Contracting. So everything that I'm touching and everything that I'm doing, she's got her hands on. Was that a pretty good, accurate job description there?
Yeah, no pressure, right?
Yeah, no pressure. How's it been? I know you've only been doing this for a couple months now, but you've done a heck of a job so far.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been about 2 months. And it's a lot, but I'm a person that really needs a lot. I get bored easily and I really need the challenge. So kind of all those different moving parts keeps me really interested and invested in achieving, which is I really need that. So it's been great. The good kind of stress. It's definitely stressful sometimes, but I think it's important to think about good stress versus bad stress. And I don't think that we've had much bad stress.
Yeah, no, it can definitely, dealing with multiple different personalities and different companies, different organizations, trying to keep all that straight from a new person coming in, because this is years and years of stuff that I've kind of built up, right? And I'm not the best at systematizing everything, hence why I need so much help, but I think that's what makes us a great team. Why in the heck, let me ask you this question. Why in the heck would you want a job that's so kind of open-ended and so not structured?
Oh, I mean, that's everything for me. I can't think of a worse fate than coming to work and being like a widget maker. I'm sure that somebody out there loves to be a widget maker, but I've never wanted to be any one thing when I grow up. Maybe for a month or a year, I've thought that I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I've kind of settled on I don't know, and I think it would be boring to be locked into any one thing. And when you're an executive assistant or somebody's support staff, you get to be all the things. And tomorrow you might come to me and say, oh my God, Allie, I have this wonderful idea. We're going to do this now. And it's completely different than anything we've been doing. And that's so exciting. That's everything. I love that.
For every one of Allie, there's 20 other people that cannot stand to do that, right? Because it's definitely been tough. Well, I will say that you're the third executive assistant that I've hired, and all three are still inside of my organization. And we just recently promoted Mallory Woods to marketing director of Big Fish Contracting. Sonia Archer, who is also on my team, who was helping me out through last year, through this transition phase of me going from 100% Big Fish Contracting to spending more time on growing the Ben Fisher brand, the podcast, doing a lot of consulting in the roofing industry. She's still on board helping me with all the work that we do at Contractor Dynamics. So when you applied for this job, talk to us a little bit about, the interview process and what you found interesting, and give people at home a little bit of it behind the scenes take on what we do here at Big Fish.
It's comprehensive. I think that was one of the most appealing things is I'm a very thoughtful person, and the interview process was structured so thoughtfully that I knew that this was a place where work is done intentionally. And the reason I say that is because the job posting was written kind of knowing what to expect, and then I was set up for a series of 1 of 3 interviews, and that first one was just about core values. And that was so important to me to go somewhere for my next job, career, hopefully, where people had values. So knowing that everyone got screened in for that. And then the follow-up email was about the Clifton 34 assessment to make sure that my strengths align with the strengths of the role. So everybody knows what they're getting when they get me. It's not like I'm a mystery package and I could have, lied about everything in my interview. And like, I knew that it was really intentional because you're looking at these objective scores. So that was great. And then the meeting with Mallory and, Brittany, your wife was involved in the interview.
Yeah, that's a cool part, right? Like, because I said, like, this is, like, who better to, like, give you a little insight on who the crazy guy is other than the person that lives with me, right?
Yeah, not only that, but I thought it was incredibly respectful to your wife. I mean, you look at the tropes of people and their assistants, and I'm married, and, there's always a worry there about, working closely with another woman. And I thought it was so wonderful that, I saw her face right out of the gate, and her and I could start to build a relationship, because I think that that's important. If I'm going to support you, I need her to know who I am. And she did from the very start, which was so great.
Well, she came home one night, or when she got done one night, she's like, you got to pick Allie. I said, you got to wait. I said, we got to wait for the process to work out. But she was super excited about you. So was Mallory. It's been cool. And I know that there was that second interview with Mallory, who obviously knows me better than anybody at work, probably other than Rob. And then finally you got to meet me, and I got to learn a lot about you in that interview process. It was two and a half hours in my office. We got to really know each other. And that's kind of what I want to get into today a little bit, is about your unique story of, like, all the things that you've kind of seen in your life and been through and overcame that I feel like led you to, like, have all the right pieces and parts of the DNA to make up, like, the perfect executive assistant with me. Because it's not easy to work with, I have extreme ADHD. I have, a million ideas and have trouble following up on, 90% of them. If it's just a couple, I can, I do well with it. And then because there is so much stuff going on in different relationships, and somehow all the relationships tie into a bigger picture, but, like, sometimes that's complicated to figure out. And I don't know, the things that you've been through in life, I thought were pretty cool. So you want to tell us a little bit about you and your life story, so that way the viewers at home can understand a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so, gosh, life is long. So I'm about halfway through, I'm 41 this year. And thinking back on it to kind of prep for this, I didn't have a charmed childhood. We lived in a really nice subdivision until I was about 9.
I don't trust people. Hold on a second. I don't trust people that have a charmed childhood. But keep going.
You think, like, I wish I had that, but then kind of when I look back at my skills, I would have less depth. I would have less scrappiness, less figure it out. And I think, it kind of goes back to my mom. So my mom was the person who's trying to figure out how to fix her furnace instead of calling a guy. Like, you try to make it work. You try to figure it out. And I saw that modeled from her at a very young age. So although, we weren't in the middle class, we lived in the middle class area, which was kind of a problem because, like, my dad was a truck driver and my mom worked in a glass factory, and, all the other moms are, stay-at-home moms. So we're the poor people. But we're not, but we are, So living there until I'm 9, and then they split up. We kind of lose everything and have to move in with my mom's mom.
How'd that make you feel when your parents split up?
Quite honestly, my dad was an over-the-road truck driver, so there was some sentimental, I don't know what this is going to do. Like, will I see him? Will I not see him? Because I really didn't see him very much anyway. But I was never that person that wanted their parents to get back together, because they kind of were miserable whenever he was home.
And so you could sense that as a child, and then so when they finally told you this is happening, it was like, it wasn't like the end of the world, but you probably didn't realize the gravity of the financial implication of then two parents having to, like, pay for two different houses and two different, like, lifestyles, right? Because that's definitely gets expensive.
I feel like I don't understand how I knew these things when I was 9. I think my mom talked to me a lot. My mom didn't really have anyone else to talk to. So I did know how bad it was. And that was the part that was upsetting to me about their split, was I didn't want to move. Moving ended up being the best thing for me, because we moved out of that snotty area and out into the country, and I, spent my summers in the woods and playing in cornfields and, having a much better childhood experience. But I did know how broke we were. I did know that the water didn't always work. And now I know, your water bill is probably one of your more affordable bills. So it was bad. It was bad for a while. She sold a bunch of his stuff like that. Like it was turbulent.
Was he mad about that?
Oh my gosh. He still complains about it.
That was like, 30 years ago?
Yeah, he does.
And and I'm at the point, I'm 41 years old, and I'll be 42 this year, and I'm like, man, they could take all my stuff. It's like, I hope somebody would get rid of it for me, so that way I don't have to keep packing it up and moving it every time I gotta move.
Right. So
what'd you do after that? Like, after they, split up, did you stay with your mom, I assume?
Yeah, I stayed with my mom, and we moved in with her mom. And I basically had this basement apartment. So my room was in the basement. It was huge. I had a kitchenette, my own little living room set up. And I feel like, my mom is a great mom, but I kind of was really independent. I was always the kid who got dropped off at school and didn't look back. And she was always like, you just kind of were born independent.
Do you think she told you that because she needed you to be more independent, or do you think you actually were independent and she was just telling you?
That's just who I am.
All right.
I just go.
All right.
So, pretty independent. My teachers always kind of remarked we don't understand you. Either you get an A or you get an F. There's no middle for you. And that's just kind of how I'm geared. So if I'm interested in something and I want to figure it out, I can do anything. I really don't believe there are any limitations. But if I'm disinterested or I don't see the why, if logically something just doesn't make any sense to me, it's really hard. I'm better at it now. But, through my teens and my early 20s, I blew a full ride scholarship to Carlo.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you blow that?
Just
not paying attention?
I had no motivation. I thought I wanted to write, and then I kind of learned, if I want to be a writer, I'm never going to have any money, and I'm going to have,
It all depends on what kind of writer you are, right?
Well, at 18, I just couldn't see a path forward, and I hate rejection. So the idea of writing things and getting them turned down, and then the thing about college that really turned me off was that you don't actually get to learn about anything that you want to do for the first 2 years. So everything was really general, and I just thought, this is stupid. This is a waste of my time.
Sounds like my story. That sounds like my story. The same thing with the A's and the F's. I don't know if I probably got a couple F's. But for me, it was either B's or D's. Mm-hmm. Because I never even tried that hard for the A. I was either interested and I could just pass just on showing up and smiling, or I struggled because I didn't want to do the work and I didn't like it. So,
well, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but they say that that's a big ADHD thing.
Yeah, so it does sound. So I'm definitely with you on that. That's another reason why I probably like you a lot, because I'm thinking we only want to do stuff that we want to like, and
yeah, and I mean, in a perfect world, nobody would ever have to do anything they don't like, but you have to. For me, that's the struggle with housework. I am not.
We all can't get along. If we all just found out stuff that our superpowers were, we all just equally distributed our superpowers in this world, it'd be a great utopian societies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it like to just blow off the college thing? Did it feel like the same as it did for me? Where you felt like you were disappointing everyone, you're disappointing yourself, you feel like all your friends are going on to these illustrious careers, and you're just kind of left back here feeling what the heck did I just do?
I definitely broke my mom's heart. Like I said, they were both blue collar. I would have been the first. A few of my cousins had done college, but I would have been the first in that direct lineage to go to college and finish. And, she always kind of had that poverty mindset no matter how much you have, it's not enough, and you need to get educated. So when I threw away $16,000 a year for 4 years, that was really hard for her, I'm sure.
Did she go to college?
No.
No, so it was one of those things where, like, don't do as I do as I say kind of thing.
She would have never had that opportunity. Like, she just wouldn't have had that support from her parents. My mom's very intelligent, but she doesn't realize, like, I think she does now, but when she was 18, she probably wouldn't have felt like college was for her.
Is that because maybe the way your grandparents kind of raised her, kind of tough on her, a little?
Yeah, her mom was a hard lady.
Okay. How do you think your mom was on you, like, growing up? Because I know my mom, it was like, one point, there's a lot of what I would consider macro love, and there's a lot of, like, hard work and, like, like, definitely show up on time, do what you're going to do, but there was always that scarcity mindset, right, of, there's always something more out there, but, like, we want you to go after it, but only if it's safe.
Yeah.
Like if it's the school says it's okay, well then it's okay, right? Like, or if the government says it's okay, right?
Definitely a rule follower mentality.
Yeah.
My mom never smoked, rarely drank, went to bed at a reasonable hour, but I was an only child. I'm her only child. And I was spoiled. I had no chores. I didn't clean up after myself. She just kind of did everything for me.
Well, there's a difference, because I had two sisters and we had chores all the time.
No, I didn't have to do anything.
We were part of the wait staff at my house. we were like the butlers. No, I don't think, in case of any of my family's listening, it wasn't that extreme. We only had one chore to do every day, but definitely was done, so...
Yeah, I was very spoiled. And although we had a scarcity mindset, I have to say she made everything happen for me that I ever wanted. So if it was a prom and I needed a dress, or if it was band and I needed an instrument, or I wanted to sign up for some extracurricular thing, she made everything happen.
Well, how about your grandma? Because, I'm sure your grandma was around a lot, too. So, like, who would you consider had the biggest influence on your life, either positive or negative, like, at that time in your life?
My grandma, for whatever reason, when we moved in, she didn't like me anymore.
Oh.
And I've talked to one of my mother's sisters about this, and she said, Alicia, as soon as you hit puberty, you're her worst enemy. We don't know why she was that way, but she just was. We were very close when I was little. She used to take me to movies, miniature golfing, you name it. We were there, and then for some reason, she just kind of turned, and she was just very critical of everything. I had a lot of friends that were guys. I've always really gotten along with guys more than girls, and that would drive her insane. Like, guys would come and pick me up, and she...
Because you're not going with one guy steady. That's probably why.
Well, I wasn't going... I know. Going together.
I know. That's the joke, though, right? Like, you're...
Yeah. So she really didn't like that. And, nothing ever was good enough. Oh. And she lives in my head now because before I went to college, before I went to Carlos, she said, I don't know why you're doing this. I don't know why you'd even bother. You're just going to quit. Wow. And I did. I did quit.
Yeah, because she spoke it into existence.
Yeah.
Well, so hopefully over time that voice in your head, that inner voice, we all have that inner voice, by the way. We should probably do a whole podcast series on the inner voice. We all have the inner voice, and it's usually made up of a collection of different people who influenced us at a young age. And it takes a lot of work to get that inner voice out. But speaking of the fact that this kind of segues into, you had a lot of friends, a lot of guys, talk to me a little bit about what was life like, after you kind of like evaporated or got out of your, mom and your grandma's, ways, after 18, I think you remember you telling me that you got married, you had some kids, you got divorced. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I quit college, just kind of bounced around to random jobs. followed around a couple bands that were kind of like just local bands in the area.
Like, as a groupie, or like you were playing in the band?
A little bit of both. I was in a band. Yeah.
Do you play instruments?
I played bass guitar.
There we go.
For a while. I don't know if I could play it now. But yeah, I was in a band in high school, and then the guy that was the drummer in my band invited me to go see his new band, and then those guys all became my friends really quickly, and then about 2 years later, I married my first husband, and we moved to Coraopolis, and then bought a house in West Mifflin, or in Dormont, and I worked in West Mifflin, so my goal was to get out of the rural area. So I'm originally from Mount Pleasant, Scottsdale area. It's like an hour south of Pittsburgh, and my entire, like, if I never wanted to be anything when I grew up, I definitely knew that I did not want to be a resident of that area. That's what I wanted.
Well, if you're going to be nobody, you might as well be a nobody in the city, right?
Yeah.
Rather than being nobody in the country.
Yeah. So that was like huge for me. Whenever,
that was the goal.
Yeah, get out of this town. So I moved to Pittsburgh, and I worked in the hospital. So I had an office job, decided I wanted to go to school for nursing, got accepted to nursing school, and...
Why did you want to go to nursing school? Like, especially after seeing what band life is all about. Like, how can you, like, why go to that? Like, why not figure out a way to make it in the music industry? Or was that just like a hobby that like everybody else was kind of doing as a hobby, and you realized, oh no, I got to get a real job?
Yeah, no, that was definitely a hobby. And then the real job was an office job. I think I was a receptionist for a while. I worked for like a mortgage servicing company. That was really boring.
Did that check the box at least for mom and grandma?
No, because it's not a career. Really? It was a job.
Oh, okay. It was just a job. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a difference. So, decided nursing is a career. I wanted to have a job that whenever my kids would go to school, my future kids, because I didn't have any yet, would go to school, they could say, my mom's a nurse. And that sounded really good to me. And they make a good amount of money.
Yeah, they do.
And it's different every day. So that kind of checked that box for me, you know, different. I knew I'd never be a doctor's office nurse. And I wanted to experience it instead of working in the office and going to nursing school. I thought, well, I'm just going to go get a job in the hospital right now because I'm inpatient and I needed it. I needed to know what it would be like. So I got a job in the emergency department in an inner city hospital. So I worked at Shadyside.
Did you have kids at the time, or was this before kids?
No kids.
No kids. So you, like, it was just you, your husband. Now you got this new career kind of like in nursing. Mm-hmm. And did you like it?
There's a lot to like.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about 2 or 3 things that you really liked, then let's talk about 2 or 3 things that you really hope you never have to go back to.
Yeah. So when I worked in the city hospital, I loved that it was constant adrenaline. Constant. Like, you have down days in the ER, like, if there's a football game on, we didn't get busy. It sounds crazy.
No one comes in for injuries when the Steelers are on. Everyone's sitting still. Everyone's sitting still for 3 hours.
Yep. So on those days, it was down, but you needed that because it's so busy every other time. So, I worked Presby trauma for a while. That was a rush. I liked being there for people on the worst moment of their life. You know, it's really hard, but it's really rewarding to know that you were there for someone when they were really sick or maybe when their loved one had just passed. I liked being that person that was there for them. There's also a lot of knowledge there. I like to learn. So, I would study, when we weren't super busy, I would study patients' charts and try to kind of see the progression of how they got to where they were. If they were really sick or had like a really chronic illness, like you could go back through the chart and see all of the kind of bullet points on the way to there. So that was really interesting. Nurses can be really, really, they say they eat their own. So there's a lot of kind of infighting and compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is hard to watch. And then when you start to see it developing within yourself, is really scary. So I think back now to people that were going through something really hard or something that really should have bothered me, and I just didn't feel anything.
But give me an example. Give me like an example of the worst thing that like ever happened that you like looking back, you're like, wow, that should have bothered me and it didn't.
When I worked trauma at Presby, people died constantly.
Wait, what's the worst thing you ever seen there, if you don't mind sharing?
The worst one was a woman. She had gotten hit by a train in East Liverpool, Ohio. That's the closest trauma hospital is Presby, which is quite a ways away. So she came in and she was somehow still alive, but her skull was really, really badly fractured, and I had to shave her head so that they could put there's a thing, I don't remember what it's called anymore, but there's a thing they have to put in the back of your skull to kind of measure the pressure when you have a head injury like that. And it was really, really bad, and it wasn't like I was just watching it. I was in it. Like I was physically trying to shave her head. And she's very, very bloody and everything's matted, and everybody in this room knows that she's going to die. Like she's already dead, but her heart is still beating. So we keep going. And that was probably the worst one.
Wow. So let's just take a minute. Let's sit on that for a second. So everybody listening, like, first of all, your life is so important, and your life is so beautiful, and it's so good, and you have you're alive right now if you're listening to this. But that lady's probably not, right? She probably didn't make it, right?
She did not make it.
Yeah, and also, we can also have gratitude for all of our emergency responders that have to live that life every single day, and some of them have been doing this for 30, 40 years. And, I can't imagine what that's got to be like every day to be able to be in that, that mode, that emergency mode, right? Like, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, surgeons in the ER, like, just constant. Like, nothing's planned, nothing's it's different when you're up there 6 floors or 10 floors up there in the different hospital, right? Like a different part of the wing where things are more structured and planned and organized. I mean, that's got to be... What was it like dealing with other people, even at your level, when they're under pressure constantly? Because people eventually just like snap, right?
Well, sometimes they snap, and sometimes that part of them just shuts off. And I would argue that that's
like
worse.
They freeze.
Yeah, it's just not there anymore. So you watch them. You watch them cut open someone's chest and flap the flap up over their head, and you don't feel anything because this isn't a person anymore. This is a body, and we know they're going to die, and we don't have a good outlook, and they go up to the OR, and you don't cry, and that's not normal. Like, that's not normal. So,
do they give you any training for that? Like, when you're do they have any is there any training for the people that have to endure this every single day? Like, is there nothing? They don't.
No.
They don't. One day there will be, because eventually people are not going to be able to handle it anymore, and they'll realize how screwed up it is, and they're going to need they're going to need that human touch again, right? Because we can't just because I'm sure that things happen because they're not. And
there might have been something for the nurses, but you have to remember I was a tech, so I got through about 3/4 of nursing school. Things kind of got hard at home. I had to pick up more hours. That wasn't compatible with doing school anymore. So I was just a tech. And when I say just a tech, that's how not all the nurses, but, that's how some of them make you feel. So, the nurses might get some sort of compassion fatigue training, but the techs don't get that.
So you guys are kind of like the runts. You're almost like the janitors of the trauma division, right? Like, it's like that, or not to put janitors. We all need janitors too, so not to put anybody. But I'm just trying to give everybody a picture of because Because I think when we go into the emergency room, first of all, if we're there for ourselves, like, we just think everybody's at the same level. Anybody that's willing to help us, like, we don't care how much they make an hour, what they say to us. Like, we're excited to see one person show up and talk to us. And it's probably usually the tech, right?
You're right.
Yeah, and we don't realize that because we're not paying attention to that. But that's so interesting. Was there a lot of turnover with techs? I'm assuming there had to be, like, some turnover because this can't be something that, like, because once somebody sees that, they're probably like, oh, I can't do this no more, right? Like, there's probably a lot of people that get in and, like, get out, right?
Well, you don't get to work in that area right away.
Oh, okay. So it's like a badge of honor, like you get to move up to that area? Because I feel like...
If you want to. So I started at Shady Side. Shady Side's known for their cancer care and their stroke care. But they don't have trauma. So I was at Shady Side, and I decided I wanted to figure out what kind of an ER nurse I wanted to be. So I applied for a transfer to Presby, and I got picked.
When did you start having children? Because I know you said you had a couple kids. When did you have kids? Was it after the ER experience?
Yeah, so I was working in the ER through both of my pregnancies.
Oh, wow.
So I, worked up until I delivered with both of them. And I was at, I think I was back at Shady Side. So I wasn't doing trauma when I was expecting. But I definitely carried both of my boys through working in the ER. And that was actually one of the main catalysts for me getting out.
Oh. Tell me more about that. Why is that?
So we moved back to the rural area that I'm from.
That you didn't want to be in?
That I didn't want to be in.
Why'd you move?
We needed the support system. So
okay.
We were living in the city. My ex-husband lost his job during the recession in 2004, and it just made sense. It made sense to come back near family. There were some things happening around our house in Dormont. There was like an armed robbery and like a big drug bust up at the T station, and we just kind of thought like it's probably time to go. So I leave my city ER and I get a job at the rural ER near my hometown, and it's a culture shock. So I had been working at, the state-of-the-art educational medical centers. UPMC is first class. Small rural hospitals, they don't have the capabilities to save people in the same way. So it started, my journey out of it started with a few cases with like, oh, he died. I don't think he would have died if we'd been in Pittsburgh. And then that just kind of kept happening. I was at that rural ER for 2 years. And the other realization that I had was that there's no children's hospital out here. So we would get kids, and sometimes we would get very, very sick kids, and that wasn't something I ever had to deal with or figure out how to reconcile at the end of the day. And there were a couple kids that had really, really bad. They were in a bad way. And we didn't know what happened to them because, they would fly them out as soon as they could. But, there was a kid that got hit in the head with a horseshoe, and they just kept, like, resetting. So, like, they would reorient him, and then they would go to sleep, and then they would wake up and have no idea what happened to them. And we never found out if they were okay. And then there was a little boy who had their tonsils out, and very rarely, a kid will start bleeding from that, and it's really hard to stop it because you can't pack it unless you intubate them. But when you're in a rural ER, the doctors aren't as
not used to doing that as often,
right?
So it's like almost like one of those skills they have to kind of relearn. Like, hey, where's the YouTube video on how to do that, right? Like,
you're not kidding.
No, I know. I can only imagine. Listen, it's like sending somebody up that's not used to doing something, and you do it once a year or once every 2 years, and you're like, what the heck? I don't remember how to do this. And then people are trying to figure it out. And it's almost like, and be careful for all the moms and dads at home, plug your ears, but it's like, oh, we're going to practice on your son today. Like, it's really what's happening, right?
Well,
like, And when you can't unsee what you saw at Shadyside, right? The state-of-the-art, one of the best hospitals in the world, all the way to like rural, hour out here in the boonies, and like they're doing the best they can. It's not like they have bad intentions.
They are.
But like they don't have all the equipment, and they don't have all the people, and they don't have all the processes, right?
Right. So, and the people that I worked with were amazing and doing the best that they could with what they had. So, we have this child and we're taking blood pressures like constantly. Like as soon as the cuff deflates, it's inflating again. And I'm running to the blood bank for like uncross-matched red cells. And like the helicopter is coming, but like there's also a storm. So like if that storm comes before the helicopter gets here and they can't leave, what happens? And it was the worst. It was the worst. It was worse than the train because I had kids at that point. So like I'm not looking at that little boy. I'm looking at my little boy in that bed. So I said I have to get out of here.
That's tough.
Yeah. And God bless people that can do it, but I knew after that day, the horseshoe day, I was like 1 foot out the door. After that day, I was like, I'm done. I just got to figure out how to be done.
So how was it like going through all that, having kids, being married, right? Being married is tough, in and of itself. How was everything going at home with the relationship with the husband and the kids? And, I think we got a good tone on how it was at work, so
yeah.
How did that carry over to home life?
Well, it doesn't stay at work. So probably during that point in my life, I was definitely drinking too much. I try to kind of forget about that part, but it was there. And my husband at the time, great dad, but he kind of was in a tailspin. He didn't know what to do. He felt like the hospitality industry kind of betrayed him when he lost his job. He was always really dedicated, always the one who comes in for a call off or stays extra, and then really felt like they threw him away. So he kind of was in a point in his life where nothing made sense and he didn't know what he wanted to be. And although, we have these 2 kids at this point, we always kind of lived like teenagers, video games and pizza and dirty dishes in the sink. And when we kind of talk about it now, we just say like, yeah, we weren't able to become adults together. Like, because it was always okay that I drank too much, and it was always okay that he didn't have a full-time job, because we just would kind of like
you make the best out of it, but you weren't necessarily doing productive things to move the needle forward. You were just trying to do things to take the pain away.
Yep, and neither of us would push the other one because we didn't want to be pushed ourselves. Right.
So what's the big takeaway? Like, if you could I don't know, some key things that you've learned through all that, because that's a heck of a journey. I know you have a lot more, but for the sake of time, what are some key takeaways that you would tell some of the listeners at home right now? Like, if they're in those types of situations, whether it's, hey, dealing with a loved one where you kind of were forced into a situation like you were with your mom and grandma and trying to figure out, if it's a young person right now, trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. What it's like if you're young and you're getting married, and how to level each other up, whether you take a job and you realize it's not for you, how to move on and look at the bright side. What kind of parallels and lessons can you take from some of those experiences?
I think that life can be super heavy. And, I think back to those times for myself and my ex-husband, and we should have found a way, or maybe I don't even know if we could have found a way to have better outlets. So, you have friends, but, your friends are just going to say, hey, let's go get a drink, wherever they should have said, hey, you need a therapist. I wish I had a mentor in my life at that point that could have been wait, what are you doing? When's the last time you slept at your house? What do you mean you're leaving your 8-month-old baby to go to the bar? I wish that I had the vulnerability or just the wherewithal to know somehow that, I was seeking comfort in all of the wrong things. and that just being faithful to my husband probably wasn't enough in that moment, and him just being faithful to me really wasn't enough in that moment. Like, we needed to do something else, because, you know, substance abuse, and I think we were both really chronically depressed for a long time. It took a lot of figuring out to, like, figure out, like, how did I get here, and, like, what do I do? Like, is this my life now? And it was kind of just like stumbling around in the dark. So I would wish for my past self that I would have known, like, you need to seek some professional resources to kind of climb out of this hole faster.
Yeah, I think we always learn stuff like that as we get older. But then, like, we always wonder, like, would our younger self really listen to our older self? Or will we just say, oh, stop being like that. You know, I'm going to go do this because I want to do it anyway, right?
Yeah, I didn't hurt anybody. I would have just said, I'm not hurting anybody.
Yeah, you're like, oh, just leave me alone. I just need a few hours of space, right? Like, but like, no, I'm with you. I think me and you have a lot of similar lessons that we've been learning in life, and you definitely have an impressive story. What I think is interesting, and I want to catch up people to the end, is the relationship that you have now, you know, even with your ex-husband and your kids, I feel like is a really mature one. That a lot of people should, you know, take advantage of. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll move on to kind of some stuff that you got going on today.
Yeah, so it was really important to us to not, I feel like sometimes when people get divorced or, you know, have to figure out separate living arrangements and split the kids, that it becomes like a tit for tat, and you get a bunch of professional people involved, and it just kind of snowballs into a really dark place. Neither one of us wanted that. So we did everything on our own. We don't have a custody agreement. And I actually made sure that I moved really close to him, because I feel like if my kids are happy, I'm happy. And I didn't ever want a situation where I was a weekend mom or he was a weekend dad. Like, we always took it from a perspective of how can we make this work the best for the kids. So I know it's not possible for everyone, but it's what works for us. So, you know, we co-parent like champs. Like, we, you know, whatever the kids want to do, we try to make that happen. And we try to keep any kind of tension down. You know, those first couple years, we've been apart for 9 years now. You know, the first 2 or 3 were really hard. But we're at a place right now where I consider him my friend.
That's a good place.
Yeah. We keep each other really updated on, you know, what's going on. And if he, you know, wants to go do something, or I want to go do something and take the kids, we just kind of come together to make it happen. So. And
do you think that a lot of that, because, you know, I'm in a similar situation. I haven't been divorced for quite as long, but, you know, 2 to 3 years is almost up, and, like, it's definitely the communication's getting better. I think maybe we're all getting older and wiser. Might have happened anyway. Also that space, you know, and then being able to just operate all about the intention for the kids and not having to, like, worry about, oh, the tension's on us and the kids, right? Like, that's hard to, like, it's hard to win at both, right?
Yeah.
Do you think your ex-husband has also been leveling up too, the same way? Like, as far as just, you know, everybody's just growing up, right? Like, it's just.
Yeah. I mean, he's grown in ways that I don't think he ever would have if we had stayed married. So, you know, he got a really great job as a restaurant manager and kind of threw his heart and soul into that. He just recently left that. He's going back to be a teacher, which suits him so perfectly. Like, I don't know why, like, we didn't see it before, but I just think, like, we grew up. It took us a long time to grow up. Yeah. So, like, well, we're kind of just
we're
now.
We're still growing up. We might not fully grow up till we're 50. So.
Right.
But you're in a great relationship now. Tell us a little bit about your new husband. And, like, I think that he's cool because first of all, I haven't even met him, DJ. But I hear a lot about him. Content creator. He's more of an artist, where I'm more of like a business person. He's more of an artist, but he does kind of like the same things, right? He's got his own little channel on YouTube, and he's doing lots of cool stuff, and he's in the brand. So I found that really interesting. Talk to us a little bit about what DJ's up to.
Yeah, so DJ is, I think, at heart a comic artist. So he's he had a running comic series for a while. He's a marketer by trade. And recently his newest project is called Draw or Die. And he has a YouTube channel. And basically his mission in life now is to encourage as many people as possible to draw every day and to feel supported as an artist. Because a lot of times when you're someone that can draw things, if somebody wants a tattoo drawn or a logo for their business or, something really self-serving, you're the first person on their speed dial. But whenever you're trying to figure out how to pay the bills or feed your kids, there's not a lot of work to be found unless you're like really good. And DJ, he is lucky enough to have built his skill set and found the time to put in the effort to make the networking connections necessary along with building his skills as an artist, and he gets that paying work. But what he found was a lot of people that he knows would say like, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you keep going. My wife complains that I'm drawing and I'm not spending time with her, or my parents say that this is a waste of effort and I should just go get a real job. Or, I've been sending my comic samples to all these publishers for years and I don't even get a rejection letter. And it's just a really hard road for something that seems like an inborn passion for so many people. So he really wanted to build a community where other artists would discover him, on YouTube or Instagram or wherever people get their content. And be able to find a place with other like-minded people where they could say, like, no, it is really cool that I'm an artist, and not just when you need your tattoo drawn. Like
we do it as therapy, right? Like Draw or Die is like, hey, it's almost like a therapeutic thing. Like
it is.
Because I've seen some clips, right? And I think it's really cool. And I haven't drawn since I was probably, a kid when I was like 7, 8, 10 years old on the tops of Air Jordan boxes, back when I was collecting baseball cards in my room. When my mom would ground me, I'd get the markers out and I'd start doodling. And when I watch your husband, I'm like, man, that's the 7-year-old Ben Fisher at heart. Like, and he's just, he's the, the 40-year-old version. And he's just like, he's growing, right? Like, he is like doing this for a living. I find it real cool. And there's so many people out there, if you're listening, like whether you're an artist, whether you're a roofer, whether you're an ER worker, like so many people are so good at like what they do, but a lot of people don't know how to explain how they do it or why they do it. And I think that, there's a little bit of, it's a different skill set that you have to be able to develop to kind of magnify kind of what you do, kind of like promote it, market it, right? And then when you can able to do that, you can help other people. That's kind of like what we do here on the Big Fish Cares podcast. It's kind of what I've been doing with Big Fish Contracting. And I'm assuming, Allie, like the fact that your husband's into this, you obviously also... me and you talked about Gary Vee and some of the things that you're kind of into. When you sent me, before the final decision was made, you sent me a pitch deck through LinkedIn. And you literally designed me a pitch deck and how you would present. To explain to people what you did for part of that, because I thought that was really cool. It's probably what landed you the job.
So if you follow Gary, you know that he is all about kind of taking control of the process of getting the job that you want or the clients that you want, and making sure that you are an active participant in building out that future. And I think, I don't listen to everything that Gary says, but like, I like a world where that works. So, I studied you for probably like two weeks or so, maybe 3 weeks during the interview process. And,
that's scary.
Yeah, the job description in the interview process was so spot on that I felt like I manifested it. And I thought like, okay, well, if I'm going to manifest this, I have to do everything that I can to make this happen. I can't be passive. I have to make it happen. So I had the interview, and then after that last interview, you were like, I don't know, it's like 50-50. I don't know. Well, I'll have to let you know. And I thought like, well, I need something. I need to do something to break that 50% tie. So Gary Vee always talks about, and I think he talks about it more for like a business that you run. He talks about, going into people's DMs and commenting on their posts and asking for the job.
It's really anything you want in life. If you want something in life, you got to go be proactive and get it.
Yeah. And my initial, like, if I was just to let my own instincts govern how I did this, I would think, well, I don't want to bother him. I don't want to seem too overbearing. I don't want him to think I'm a crazy person. But I kind of just had to shut all of that off.
Shut that inner voice off. It worked.
Yeah, just shut it off and say, like, shut up. Like, you're the reason why we don't get things. Like,
I can see, like, the little devil over here on the shoulder. You're the reason we don't have anything.
Yeah, you're the reason why we stay small, but we're not staying small anymore. We're going. So I said, like, okay, inner counsel, Gary V, how do I get this job? And my inner Gary V said, like, well, he wants to know how you would get him speaking gigs. And the first step of that would be having collateral to go and pitch that. So I'll make that. So I spent, like, I don't know, it wasn't the greatest pitch deck, but I spent like 4 hours on it.
I thought it was pretty good.
And I sent it to you on LinkedIn. That felt like, I figured you'd probably have your LinkedIn notifications on more likely than you'd have your email notifications on. So I thought, I want this to ding. Like, I want you to think of me. And then be like, wow, like, she went the extra mile, she did the extra thing, because that's what I planned to do if I got the job. So I wanted to show you that I can go the extra mile. And I guess it worked.
It worked. You definitely did it, and it was awesome. Tell us a little bit about tell everybody what your time's been like here, at BennyFisher.com, Big Fish Cares podcast, Big Fish Contracting, all the different stuff that I got going on. What have you liked so much about the job? What has been challenging? What have you been learning so much? Give the listeners at home a little bit of behind the scenes, what it's like.
Yeah, it's the first time that I have started a job from remote. So that's a new challenge for me, is, meeting a bunch of people via Zoom and remembering, who they all are and what they do. I think I kind of took for granted that kind of comes naturally in an in-person setting. So that was a little bit challenging, but the good side of it is that, we have these awesome core value-minded professionals that are not limited geographically. So, we're talking to Jay from Curacao one day, and, John from, I think he's from Detroit.
Yeah.
And really, like, this broad network of people.
Talk about some people on the content team right now. Got to remember, I have a bunch of different stuff. There's some people that don't even realize that we do that much content. And then there's people that think of me just as the CEO of Big Fish Contracting. And, so I'm just trying to let the listeners out there into this. She's talking about the content team, because she deals a lot with the content team, way less with Big Fish Contracting, since I'm only spending about 4 to 6 hours a week in there. So what's it like, though, to deal with a team that's kind of like, remote all over the place? Some guys are more fractional. Some guys are more full-time. And still producing content at a high level. We've only been doing this for a year. And we were in startup mode since VCon last year, which was in May. By the time this episode is going to air, probably here in the middle of April. And so it's not even been a full year, but we've definitely had many contracts under our belt. We have a big contract right now where, we're doing something for an influencer in the roofing industry, and we're doing a lot of my stuff, stuff for Big Fish Contracting. What's it been like kind of being the point person, kind of like directing all the traffic and logistics and making sure everything gets done at a high level? What's some things you've learned along the way? It's
a process, and I'll say, I think in other roles, when you say like, oh, I don't think I'm the person to do this, or I don't think I'm particularly good at that skill set. Usually when you say you're not good at something, whoever's in charge of you will be like, okay, well, I'll give that to Carol, or like, I'll delegate that to someone else. But with you, like, I've only been here for a little over 60 days, but I'm growing already, because you're like, no, Allie, like, you're just going to need to go ahead and do that. And if I was doing it, I would do it like this, this, and this. And I'm like, I like this. Why do I like this? Like, but I just feel like kind of we push a little harder. And I wouldn't, if you had me check a box and say like, do you want me to make you do the non-preferred tasks? I would say, like, no, I don't want you to make me do that, but I'm glad that you do.
Yeah, I wouldn't give you that choice because I already know most people don't want to check the box.
Right?
Nobody wants to do things that make them uncomfortable. Like, not naturally. It's not natural. I would actually be worried about it if you did.
Right.
Because I'd be like, okay, what's really wrong with her? Like, she's way too crazy. But when you have, like, cautious resistance to it, that's healthy, I think. And I also know that people have to believe in you. You can do anything, right? Like, absolutely anything that you want to in life. And sometimes when you don't want to, if you do it anyway, and you find some wins or even find some losses, you can always learn from those things, right? And keep moving forward. What do you think is the most interesting thing now that you're inside the Big Fish's ecosystem? Like, what do you find the most interesting, or what do you find the most refreshing, or what can you share with the people listening?
We just work with really good people. Like, I don't know how. I mean, I do know how, because I've been through the interview process. I've been through the quarterly kickoff meetings. I see kind of how regimented our kind of like staying connectedness is. Like, it's all on purpose. It's very purposefully designed. But, you always get a new job and you're like, all right, like, who's the jerk? Like, I gotta, and you're just like, are you the jerk? No. Are you the jerk? No. But, like, there's truly not a jerk here. And I don't know. I don't know if I believe it. I believe it, but it's like inside.
60 days in, we'll have to have you back on like after a full year. And then, like, But I've had you just about meet everybody that's important, I feel like. And you've seen everybody at the Big Fish Contracting Company a couple times now. You see all my crazy emails. So, yeah, I mean, there's challenges, don't get me wrong, but at least we're doing challenges with people that we love to hang out with and we love to work with and that we know we're trying, right?
Yeah, if there weren't any challenges, I would have left already. Like, I really need it to power me. I need like a certain level of anxiety, like, because we're pushing and we're trying to do big things. And for a long time I thought I needed a career that had a really fancy name. Like, I thought it needed to be like, Alicia's a nurse, or Alicia is an executive director, or something like that. But that's not it. Well, you're all that here. I mean, but by the way, you're helping a bunch of damaged human beings, because we're all damaged a little bit, right? And you're helping us like edify us and get us going and working us hard. It's no different than being a nurse. Same thing as an executive director. By title, assistant was really just because that's an entry-level position. Not an entry-level position. I don't want to say that at all, because it's not. Administrative assistant's more. But executive assistant's really like, hey, whatever I need to do, like, you just have to like be the one to do it, because like, tell everybody that you work for me, so then that way they like, they like do things faster, right? Because like you've gotten some of that, right? Like sometimes people don't want to like take what I say, it's strong, right? Talk about that a little bit. Talk about your experiences with that. Because this is funny, because you can even tell everybody the secret. Like, when you email from my account, and like, I don't care, because like, it's a real thing. It's like, it's sad that it's real, but it's real. Yeah.
Talk about the games that we have to play sometimes.
Well, people don't know me, so it's not a personal slight to me. But nobody wants to deal with the assistant. Everybody wants to be important enough to deal with the talent, or the boss, or the visionary. Why I should deal with the visionary. And I don't even think it's a conscious thought for most people. I think they just go like, let me go right to the source.
Well, they've always dealt with it. They like, especially during this transition period, right? Like, And
I get it. And I dealt with that in my role right before this one. I worked for a nonprofit, and nobody wants to deal with the number two. So I email them as you. Or I Facebook message them as you. And I think I got your tone down pretty good. And then the added benefit is, like, if you're talking to someone and they're like, we Facebook messaged about that, you get to say, oh, no, that was my executive assistant.
Yeah, no, that was Allie. She makes sure I got all my I's dotted and T's crossed.
Yeah.
It's a great conversation starter, I think. It's been working out well. I mean, don't you find that people start to respond a little bit once you give them a little nudge from the Ben Fisher account?
Well, I hope they still do, now that they know it's really me.
Oh, well, I mean, listen, I get to see it too, but here's the thing, like, just with anything in life, once you take on, a lot of awesome projects and a lot of things happen, good things have happened since this podcast. Would you even be working here if I didn't have a podcast? Or do you think the podcast really was a big part of, like, not only you being interested in podcasts, but you being able a chance to get to know me without actually interviewing with me?
I definitely was interviewing you as much as you were interviewing me. So I was on like a 6-month work hiatus to find the perfect job. I didn't have anything really hanging over my head making me work. I just decided that I have to work because there's some kind of drive in me that needs it. So my next boss had to be kind of perfect.
Oh, jeez.
No, perfect for me.
Oh, like, perfect for you. I was going to say, because I am not perfect.
No. But, like, you're challenging. Like, you push, and you're kind, and you're nice. And what I didn't know was, like, so I didn't know anything about EOS. So I didn't know that visionary is, like, a job title or a personality trait. So I'd only ever heard about it, like, oh, like, Bill Gates is a visionary, or, like...
Yeah, so, all those little rich weirdos like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and yeah.
Right, but the podcast gave me insight because you have some with employees and you have some with, people that you've worked with or people that inspired you. And as much as the interview is of them, there's a lot of you that shows through of like how interested you are in other people and how you do. I mean, it's called the Big Fish Cares podcast. Like you care. So I kind of needed that to offset the visionary term because I didn't understand it yet. I get it now, but the podcast was really important because I was able to see who you were.
So that's good because for people out there that are podcasting, especially entrepreneurs, always know that like it's not necessarily about how many followers you get or how many people subscribe. By the way, if you do get value out of this podcast, like, follow, subscribe because we need all those viewers. That's what they tell me anyway. I don't know I don't know what happens when we get more people, but we'll see. Maybe we get more people that can come join the team, right? But like for me, the podcast was worth it. The last 60 episodes, 65 episodes, whatever we're on. Because if it can help attract high-level people to my organization, like to me, like it's just a great networking and community tool, right? And that's probably like 4th or 5th on most people's list when they start a podcast because they're all about, making a name for themselves and getting their stuff out there and like inspiring people, which is all good. Like that stuff is all great. And hence that's, I've always done the podcast, first of all, because I needed an outlet. We talk about healthy outlets early on in the show. If I would have had this podcast during my 20s, I might not have taken as rough and tumble of a path because this really does give me a lot of purpose to be able to like shine a light on other people, shine a light on their stories. Your story, Ali, has been amazing. It's definitely, definitely a blessing to my life and my family's life, right? I wouldn't have the time. Right? I can, provide you a great job and a great income while I can also get some of my time back so I don't have to be on Facebook all day long, or I can plan stuff and I can get the logistics stuff done behind the scenes so I can spend more time, at home with my wife and kids. And it's all about, trying to create balance, but then also trying to serve more people. And I feel like, both of our visions align with that. So I really appreciate you being on the team. Is there anything else that I didn't ask that you think I should have asked, or anything else that you want to cover before we sign off?
No, I think we hit all the high points.
All right. Well, I got 5 questions I ask every guest. Do you remember what these are?
I do. I think I don't know.
All right. So I'm going to send you to an island. There's nobody else left on the planet. It's just you on this island. You have to take one book with you. That's the only book you're allowed to take with you. What book do you take with you? I'm
going to take Survive by Les Stroud.
All right. And I'm assuming that's because you want to be able to survive, right?
Yeah, I want to live.
You want to live. All right. And then you're allowed to take one movie with you. What movie are you going to take with you?
Probably going to take Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs. That's a Quentin Tarantino flick, right?
It is. He's probably my favorite. It's between that and Kill Bill. But
wow, you really like Quentin Tarantino.
I love him.
That's good. All right, yeah. That's an interesting. That tells me a lot about you. That's a whole other podcast. I still don't understand that man sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so we did the book, the movie. All right, restaurant. You can put a restaurant. It could be like a hole in the wall out there in the country of Pennsylvania. It could be some famous restaurant. What restaurant are you going to put on that island that you could eat at every day?
Every day.
Unless you're going to go out and hunt and fish for, but like they just go to the restaurant every once in a while.
Probably Nikki's Thai Kitchen.
Ooh, love Nikki's Thai Kitchen. I'll never forget the first time that me and Brittany went there. And they always ask, like, how spicy you want your food. And because I think we were getting it to go. And, I think they say 1 to 5. Mm-hmm. And Brittany goes 2.5. And I look over and I said, that is so extra. Like, why 2.5? Why not 2? Why not 3? Like, why is it 2.5? Is it really going to be that big of a difference? So, like, I still like to pick at her for that. So, all right. So we got that one. All right. And then you're allowed to go on vacation. You're allowed to take a week and go anywhere you want in the world. Where are you going to
go? Anywhere.
Yep. It could be somewhere you've already been. You love it. You just want to go back. Could be somewhere new that you've never been to and you've always wanted to go. You get 1 free pass.
Probably Ireland.
Ireland. Why Ireland?
It's not hot. I don't like hot. And it looks beautiful. Like all the green rolling hills and grass. Yeah.
It's like California with more green.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, and then you're allowed to spend 24 hours with one person. It could be past or present, famous, not famous, somebody only you know. Who do you want to spend 24 hours with and pick their brain?
So, this is like a famous person or like...
No, it could be anybody you want. It could literally... Listen, you're on your island by yourself. Everyone in the world's gone. You can pick 20... You got 24 hours to, talk to anybody. Who are you going to talk to?
Probably my dad's mom, my nanny.
All right. Why is that?
She's just... I would want another day with her.
She got some cool stories you want to, get out of her?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's always good. That's why you always got to spend that time with those loved ones while you have them here, and then record them. I think that's a big business opportunity. I think that people would love to have more recordings of their grandmas and grandpas. I remember I got to shoot a few minutes of video for my cell phone for my grandpa. He passed away 10 years ago. He'd actually be 100 years old.
Wow.
And but I don't have enough, right? We never have enough of those memories captured. And that's another reason why I do the podcast. Because if something ever does happen to me, you guys will be able to play these for my kids. Sammy's almost 9 years old, and Evie Grace is just past 6 months. So they have at least 65 episodes in the books. So they'll be able to get a little taste of what Dad was like. But I really appreciate you being vulnerable today, Allie. I know that's tough. I think it's very, very awesome that somebody from the inside of my team wants to be on a podcast, because sometimes it's hard because they know what happens on these shows. We get a little open, we get a little honest. I really appreciate you doing that. I appreciate all the work that you put in behind the scenes. I'm excited about the future. I cannot wait to see where we're even at the end of the summer, let alone where we could be at next year. Because we are moving and we are advancing and we are changing lives. We're inspiring people and we are putting good vibes out in the universe. So I appreciate you. Okay.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. I don't even. We're going so fast, and there's so boundless of opportunity. It's really exciting.
Awesome. Well, listen, we'll put everything in the show notes. We'll have all the links for everything she talked about. We'll have hopefully a place where you can follow her on Instagram, LinkedIn. Where do you want people to follow you at?
I'm not super active.
I know you put out more content for me than you do yourself. I know.
Yeah.
I guess LinkedIn would be good.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
That's always a safe place, right?
Yep.
All right, awesome. We'll see you guys on another edition of the Big Fish Cares podcast. Remember, we launch new episodes every Friday. Be good.
Thank you for listening to the Big Fish Cares podcast.